Hello and welcome back to another video. We'll be building an AWS project, which is a card game that we'll then be deploying with CodePipeline. Using our AWS account, we're going to build a CodePipeline and S3 bucket. The CodePipeline automates and orchestrates the source code from GitHub, which we will be linking and authenticating through our AWS account. We'll put this code through the pipeline, skipping the build phase, then deploying the output into our S3 bucket. This is the repo where everything is stored. You can see the CSS file, the script.js, and the index.html. These are the PNG names, and this is the HTML file that you'll be greeted with. Now to sign in and get started. In the AWS console, let's navigate to S3. We'll need to build a bucket first of all. Ensure that you're building a bucket within a specific region. S3 buckets have to be unique across AWS, so you cannot have the same name for different buckets, even if you want to put them in different regions. My one, I'll call it card game. Ownership can stay the same. We will be unchecking block public access, because if we want anyone to use the game, they would need public access. But we will be changing this within the policies that will come after. Checking to acknowledge. We can go on to create bucket. Now we can view the details of the bucket. We need to make some changes. First, properties. We need to enable static website hosting, which is here. Change it from disable to enable. And then index.html. And now permissions. The world would need to be able to access the bucket and click the information. So we need to create a bucket policy for that. Bucket policy, onto edit. Policy generator. Once we've selected S3 bucket policy, effect allow principal would be the asterisk star, which is similar to the regular expression star that relates to all. Actions is get object. Just get object. Amazon resource name ARN would be within the bucket details. How to get it is within going back to the bucket. My one card name, properties, and then the ARN is here, which you can copy. Add conditions optional, then add statement. Once we see the statement, we can generate policy and then copy this policy. Into our policy here. So this policy allows everybody public read access to the S3 bucket. SID is the statement ID, which is an optional identifier for the policy. I'm going to change the SID to public get read object. Public get read object. Yeah, just to make it clear what the policy is. With the random numbers, it can be confusing. Once that's done, you can click Save Changes. Error. Action does not apply to any resources in statement. Okay, bit of troubleshooting already. So this should be how it looks in the end, with the ID, version, statement, SID, effect, principal, action, set up like this. Action has the comma after, not before, because it's only one action within the policy that we need. Resource does not need the comma after because it's only one bucket that we're using. Should be able to save. Perfect. Next is setting up the code pipeline that is going to orchestrate getting the code from GitHub and pushing it through the S3 bucket. Services, if it's within your used previously, you should be able to find it in recently visited. But we could type it in here for ease. Go over to create pipeline. Give the pipeline a name. Card pipeline. We're going to use V1 as we don't currently need the release safety and trigger configuration v2 offers. Execution mode, Maurice superseded, and these two are v2 specific. Service role, new service role, let it create a service role. Next, source provider. The source provider will be GitHub version 2. AWS actually recommends this over version 1 as it uses all authentication tokens, and I think it also uses a separate webhook to detect changes, which is something we don't actually need at the moment. This was actually a previous one I've created, but we would need to connect to GitHub. So from here on out, my audio actually corrupted, so I'm going to take you through this post-production. So yeah, matching CodePipeline, installing new app. My GitHub has actually already been authenticated. I'm just showing you the permissions now, showing you which repository to choose depending on how you forked it. My one's already been selected. You see it there highlighted. Okay, so once the connection has been authenticated, you should be able to see and install a new app. You should be able to see some numericals for the GitHub apps. From that, the repository should now be named whatever you've named it, and the default branch, which should be main. For full code pipeline, we won't be using that as that requires code build, and the trigger will be no filter, so it will update on every new change that's done within the GitHub. As we mentioned before, we'll be skipping this build stage into the deploy stage. From the deploy stage, now we have to select what we're going to be using to deploy it, and in this case it's going to be Amazon S3. The bucket name is what you've saved it as, and object key can be ignored. We can tick the box below and that should disappear. Now to review the changes and create pipeline. As it's building, you see the source there, which means it's taking it from the GitHub, and then it will be deploying it to the S3 bucket. To access the HTML or the web address, we would actually need to go into the bucket, into properties, and scroll down to static website hosting, and there's the link to then get to the matching card game. You can start, you can play it, and you can share it whenever you're ready. Now to show you how the updates go through. So when we make a change within the GitHub, within the HTML, I'm going to change it to v2, and that should instantly change within not only the code pipeline but the static host address as well. So the pipeline should be updating any second. And then to refresh the host address, and there v2 is there, so version 2 has loaded straight away. Now to add new features, a timer. To do that, we'll need to go back within the GitHub HTML and add it within these lines here. Yep, so once this has been added to the HTML, we can also update the script.js, which is referenced within it. Yep, so within the script.js, we can add it here. Yep, so this timer is for around 2 hours, then committing the change, and you can see the pipeline is updating. Okay, so now that's successfully deployed. If we refresh the HTML, we can see that the countdown timer has been added successfully. I'm going to leave this code within the final version, so you can choose whether you want to have the countdown timer or not. And now for shutting down resources. Yep, you can also delete the pipeline. Ensure that you're emptying the buckets as well as deleting them. IAM resources were also created, but they won't charge you, so if you don't want to delete them, up to you. And again, thank you for watching. Please let me know if there's anything else you would like to see.